Matt Dillon Monkey, Jordan Cooper tried to pretend that nominalism isn't a single cause, and Luther was not a nominalist. Yeah, I didn't argue that. So they can keep doing straw men all day long because that's all they have. Nominalism is one issue in a multi-causal argument. Yeah, correct. I mentioned in the Tucker interview Renaissance humanism. That also played a role in the Reformation. Because, for example, Calvinist was a humanist. And that doesn't mean secular humanism. It meant it was a movement at the time that was like, um, uh, I'm going blank on the Roman Catholic. Um, there were Catholics and Protestants involved in what was called humanism. Okay, this is not secular humanism, but humanism was also an important factor in uh, the Reformation. And the Erasmus, I was trying to think of it. So you have Catholic humanists like Erasmus. John Calvin was one of the humanists. And all this meant was the idea of returning to the original linguistic sources. So going back to the Hebrew text, going back to the Greek text. If you want to talk about Homer or whatever, let's go back to the Greek versions. That's what humanism was mainly concerned with as an academic movement, to move back to original texts and then to retranslate those rather than relying on a lot of medieval translations, which needed to be updated. So there's nothing inherently bad about, quote, humanism at the time of the Reformation. And again, it included everybody from Erasmus to Calvin to even Philip Melanchthon. So that's a very important emphasis on the Reformation. At no point did I say that the only basis for the Reformation is nominalism. So all of these people are just showing their mid-wit tier analysis skills to act like I made some single causal chain. I just gave one example highlighting why justification in the Protestant doctrine is not possible in the ancient medieval world. Why? Because they were not nominalists. And to have Luther's doctrine requires nominalism. To have extrinsic righteousness, which is the Reformation doctrine, you guys heard that Reform guy call in earlier. We argued this already tonight. And he agreed, yes, all your points were correct. But it doesn't apply to Calvin, right? So he's admitted that it was a problem with Luther. Oh, but let me defend Calvin. No, it's all of them, dude. It doesn't matter because the principle is, how does God declare a thing to be what it isn't? So you need theological voluntarism. I didn't even go into that. That's also an Ockhamist position. Let me give an example. So William of Ockham debated, and this is a famous medieval debate, like, could God damn the saints who are already in heaven? Right? Because the debate hinges on whether things have natures or whether there are essences or things, the principles that God has willed to be bound to. Or, as Occam thought, could God just arbitrarily will good to be evil and thus to damn the saints? To say that, well, if God wanted to, he could just flip everything and put all of the saints into hell and all the hell people into heaven. Why? Well, because God's not bound by anything. Okay, so it kind of verges over into like Islamic ideas of occasionalism. God can just will it to be either way. So what determines good and evil? Merely the divine will, right? And that's also, by the way, you can argue it's a consequence of absolute divine simplicity as well, because many of the theological voluntarists were also proponents of radical divine simplicity. Anyway, the same principle then is used, which is again in the domain of nominalism, to say that, well, God could call a thing righteous even if it's not, by just simply willing it to be so. So yeah, I might be filthy rags, but God sees me as righteous through the righteousness of Christ because he wills to do so and wills it to be so. So you see how this line of argumentation reduces to a nominalist idea of things not actually being that, corresponding to the name or the signifier. And also corresponds to other things I didn't even bring up, like theological voluntarism, which we have brought up for many years on the channel. So again, when you're on a podcast and you are simplifying complex ideas and you're responding within a limited time frame, you have to be concise. You cannot footnote every single phrase and comment. And nothing I said, by the way, is incorrect.